Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Professor Hamamoto. It is February 4, year 2024. It is 4 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And I don't know if you could hear it, but the winds are quite strong right now. And I'm telling you this because if we happen to go down, well, that's probably because of some sort of electrical outage. We know it colloquially as the Pineapple Express, a weather phenomenon where this tropical high altitude stream of bad weather is crossing the Pacific coast. And I understand that the weather is even more severe, even more harsh in the northeastern part of the United States and Canada. So hopefully for the next 60 minutes or so, we'll be able to get through this. If not, you'll know what happened. So today, I get to tackle a topic that's near and dear to me, perhaps too dear for the listener, because a lot of this that I'm about to share with you is very much intertwined with my own personal history. So I thought that rather than to go over chapter, line, and verse, a recent biography by Jann Wenner, who is the publisher and the founding editor of Rolling Stone publication. Can't call it a magazine because it didn't start out as a magazine. Today, I guess you'd call it a magazine. In the early days, it was a tabloid format, and I have copies. I don't know if I have issue number one with John Lennon on the cover, but I recall, and I'll get to this in a moment. But I do recall having several of the first volume of Rolling Stone. But and then we'll talk about, as it's implied in the title, the decline of a Rolling Stone, and what are some of the reasons for the decline, and what does it foretell for American society, culture, and politics more generally? Because yes, Rolling Stone for a number of decades now, since 1967. Well, that's when it started. I don't think it's personal. It's institutional influence didn't start really kicking in until the early 70s, and certainly by the end of the 70s. The Rolling Stone was one of the key periodicals that was being scrutinized and read by the intelligence agencies, the intelligentsia, and the intelligentsia wannabes like myself, who were in college and looking at Rolling Stone through its pages for some clues, some insights into this whirlwind phenomenon that we now call the counterculture. Rolling Stone magazine was very much part of my formative education, and it ceased to be so. I can't put my finger on it, but I think as Jann Wenner became more and more entrenched in the New York publishing establishment, DC axis, the less he remained true to his Bay Area bohemian. After all, San Francisco is known as Baghdad by the Bay, by Herb Cain, the longtime columnist for the San Francisco Chronicle. He strayed from that and became strictly an establishment figure. So, and I call that a neoliberal descent, if you will, and I'll try to explain what I mean by that as we move along here. As most of you know, publishing in America has been on the decline for the last couple of decades and really started to fall off a cliff over the past 5 to 8 years. And recently I was reading a story about I guess it was a primarily online publication that was capitalized to the tune of $50 million. And it didn't even last a year before the plug was pulled on it. Anyway, that's symptomatic of the crisis in publishing going on. I think there's a solution to it, a very simple solution, and ironically, it's a solution that Jann Wenner and his stalwart crew implemented as a bunch of amateurs back in prior to 1967, when they first published their inaugural issue. And the secret is publishing. The secret is publishing journalism. That's how the bloodletting is going to be stanched so far as publishing is concerned. I have a strong suspicion that the exsanguination, let's call it, of publishing, whether it's supposedly indie or mainstream or so-called legacy, it's hard to tell the difference these days, is being allowed to happen. It's being allowed to bleed out, in other words. And the reason for this is we're already seeing is that this will complete the fusion between corporations, the military, and the government. It's called corporate fascism or corporatism. No hype intended. When I use the F word fascism, people go, "Oh, okay, here it goes again." No, no, no. It's a modern phenomenon, and it's become um, even more refined and rationalized because of the technologies that were pioneered by DARPA Valley, right? Surveillance Valley, we call it Silicon Valley. It's military, right? Hopefully, you've seen my talks previously over the past 3 years, right? If you haven't, please subscribe, then you'll be privy to the previous work, and you'll get to the playlist of my pieces that I've been doing with the talks that I've been giving. And the current talk here is very much building on the preceding work that I've done, including Marin County comes up again, interestingly enough, because the early years of publisher and editor extraordinaire Jann Wenner were spent in what was then rural Marin County, San Rafael. I don't live too far from there. I've relocated from Sacramento out to Davis, and I'll probably be setting up more permanently within the Davis area very soon. Um, but the point is, I'm in that general region. However, in my formative years, as I alluded to at the top of this cast, I was living in Orange County, Anaheim, California, which is also the home of Disneyland, by the way. That might help explain my warped perspective on reality. Um, and I was curious to learn in the autobiography of Jann Wenner that he moved down after his parents split up. Both very interesting uh, individuals. The mother was very bohemian. She's a professional writer. She's a published writer. And the father was a businessman, but they were both veterans of World War II who had migrated from New York City. And I think they come from left liberal families in New York. And I'm mentioning that because that's where Winner returned to. He returned from this sort of corporate left liberal roots that he grew up in. He tried very hard to be counterculture, and he covered it very, very well. But on a personal level, and I'm not knocking for this he is who he is. That's his family heritage on both sides, from what I can understand. So that shaped his perception of the world, politics, the sociological currents of which he was part of, and helped to, um, I won't say engineer because I'm not of that ilk that everything in the counterculture was engineered. Most of it happened organically, and a lot of it was steered, not engineered. To the extent that Rolling Stone was part of it, part of the intelligence op, I don't know. I think that remains to be seen. Certainly, I had my suspicions over the years, and they've been confirmed by the fact that Rolling Stone is no longer privately held, with the majority shareholder being Jann Wenner, but it's now owned by a globalist company called Penske Media, Penske. I haven't been able to find. I haven't really spent the time, honestly, but I haven't found out where Penske originates. I mean, I can go on Wikipedia and look through the begets and the begots and all that, but I have a suspicion they have a connection, like a lot of these media corporations. You've heard of Operation Mockingbird by now, I'm sure. So I'm not going to rehearse that whole history there. Uh, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. But I think eventually the pressures became so intense, not so much financially, but politically, for Wenner to accept the offer that he couldn't refuse by what, um, again, can I use this term, New World Order publishers? Right? I can't use fascism because that's kind of cliche. So is New World Order. That's become a cliche. Corporatism, I don't know. I don't know what a good word is for this, but we're entering into this new phase of governance. A lot of it being controlled by AI, and that's another reason why the Jann Wenner was given probably a good glimpse into the future that most journalism, quote unquote, was going to go AI anyway. So he might as well cash out. Just as a lot of music already is AI and is going to be further moving down that road. And that's perhaps one of the reasons why some of the best and brightest singer-songwriters, composers, writers, songwriters of our time have sold out at least part of their catalog, if not all of it. And such figures include individuals like Bob Dylan, who was very close to Jann Wenner, not coincidentally here. So they're telling us what direction the wind is blowing, and part of my job is to lick my finger, put it up to the wind, and see where it's blowing, and share my insights with you today. And as we begin here, I'll try to clue you in a little bit of my background, which, strangely enough, even though I'm several years younger than Jann Wenner's, there's some interesting parallels with his early life and mine. And I'll start off by saying it's because we were both student journalists. I don't. I guess for me, it started when I was in fifth grade. I guess I was already exhibiting writing talent, and Mrs. Hicks gave me an assignment to present for the school newsletter what we were doing in class. And I talked about what we were doing in social studies and in English, and I encapsulated it pretty well. And she was very happy. And I guess, I didn't know at the time I was perhaps a prized pupil of hers, but I found that I enjoyed writing. I enjoyed putting it together. It came very naturally to me. Not that it's easy, but it was natural in the sense that I was more than willing to put the hard work that's involved in trying to craft a simple sentence. Right? It's still difficult. It doesn't get any easier. Um, so we were both student journalists. I didn't write for the paper. He did write for the student newspaper because he went to private schools. This is where we have a wide difference, right? Right. He talks about feeling like he was an oddball because his family were secular Jews living mostly amongst the WASP, North Bay elite, Marin County, San Francisco. Right, the old wealth is WASP, except for maybe the Levi Strauss family or some banking people. But we different that he comes from relative affluence, perhaps even wealth on both sides of the family and his immediate family, whereas my people are staunchly working class. The second reason is that his family lineage was not interrupted by World War II. Both of his parents were in the U.S. military. So was my father, but most of his people, or a lot of my family, not him specifically, were in concentration camps. So while he and his peers, who are my generation, right, were very well along through the assimilative process, we were starting all over. We were starting from scratch, right? So people like myself and one of his original writers, first writers, early writers, let's say, Ben Fong Torres, we were coming from a different platform. And I have to hand it to Jann Wenner. He's the first person, maybe because he had nothing to lose, I don't know, whatever it is, I tip my hat to him. He's a mensch because he hired a Chinaman for a very crucial role as a writer for a fledgling paper, right? Of course, he didn't pay or he underpaid Ben Fong Torres. And as a aspiring writer myself, I got the bug early on. And certainly by high school, I had a secret desire to become a writer. Maybe even I can't remember. I think I might have harbored this secret desire to one day have a byline in Rolling Stone magazine. But I think my aspirations were even higher than I wanted to write for Esquire. To me, writing for Esquire would have been the ultimate. And then later on, because Esquire came back, the new version of it was very exciting magazine. You can tell I'm a magazine junkie. I started subscribing to magazines as soon as I had enough money from my paper route to buy my own subscriptions. My parents had their own subscription, Life magazine, Reader's Digest, the usual, right? And of course, the daily Los Angeles Times. That was our newspaper. But I wanted my reading material as well, and I also wanted to write for Vanity Fair. Not anymore. All these publications have gone globalist. They're all neoliberal rags. Even the Atlantic, so, certain journals of opinion, I think they've pretty much stayed the course, but most of them have been incorporated into this larger New World Order framework, right? Which, for the lack of a better term at this point, I'll call corporatism, right? So my first foray into being a member of a journalistic staff was at Savannah High School. That was in Anaheim, California, and it was known for its conservatism, right? We're talking about Orange County. It wasn't as conservative as you might imagine, by the way. That's kind of a cliche. Part of it is true, but we used to call it Klanaheim. At least my friend Howard Wilson referred to it as Klanaheim, as in KKK, because the Ku Klux Klan did march, I think, on the 4th of July down the mainstream of Anaheim, downtown Anaheim, California, at a certain point. By the time I showed up, that pretty much had faded, and Anaheim High School was like a lot of places in America, devoted to baby boomer type families, right? New suburban enclaves. I mentioned my friend Howard Wilson. We lived in a development called Hawaiian Village, right? And we went to Brookhurst Junior High School where we met. We played in the band. We had a shared love of music, and then we progressed on to high school. He became the editor. He was either the editor in chief of the school newspaper, or he was the editor of the editorial section or the op-ed section. I didn't have an administrative job. I just fooled around most of the time, and I brought my portable. So it wasn't really mine; it was the family's portable stereo, and I brought in my Chuck Berry records, and we would play records, rock and roll mostly, during the day, during school, until right before deadline, right before the paper was due out, and then we'd write like mad to get our articles. Anyway, I wrote for him in the op-ed section. And this is around the time that Rolling Stone was getting off. And like I said, it started in 67. And I don't know if it was exerting an influence on me, but I did remember reading the byline of Ben Fong Torres, who I'll get to in a moment. And I was inspired by that because I didn't see any yellow people with bylines in journals. I didn't see very many yellow people in general. Mostly we were being kicked about on television. We were kind of like wallpaper in television. And I wrote 2 books, not one. It's one. I've written 2 books on television, one on the situation comedy and one about Asian Americans on television. So I'm considered to be the authority in that area. And I have to stress that because a lot of newbies don't know my name, and you better learn it, because some jerkwad published an encyclopedia of television studies, and I wasn't in there, and I should be because my book, Nervous Laughter, was the first one done in that era, thanks to Professor Fred McDonald, right? And I mentioned that because one of the knocks on Jann Wenner is that he's only paying attention to white people, right? He was removed from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame board of advisors, or the board, let's call it, because in his most recent book, he's written about a dozen books at least by now, but his most recent book called The Masters, and this features 7 different singer-songwriters from Boner, who I despise, Dylan, who I revere, Jerry Garcia, who shouldn't belong here. I don't know what, but Mick Jagger, yeah, Lennon, definitely. Lennon should be up there with Dylan, so far as I'm concerned, and Peter Townsend, absolutely. Bruce Springsteen, not so much. Anyway, I didn't want to go off on my own personal taste. The point is that he went on. He was interviewed by the New York Times, and he blundered by saying something to the effect that there were no black men or people of color or black women or women, whatever color, because they just, he didn't find them articulating the kind of thoughts that he wanted. Now, so far as I'm concerned, that's as an editor, as a writer, that's his prerogative, right? And I say shame on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for submitting to whatever pressures being put. It's certainly not being exerted by me, but some jerkwads out there, ass clowns, who are trying to gain their reputation by calling out whoever else for whatever purpose, so that they can extort money from them. It's sort of kind of like an anti-defamation league in reverse, right? But I don't know who's collecting on it. Certainly, Jann Wenner, I'm not going to feel too sorry for him because it's not going to hurt his bottom line that much. He sold out a long time ago, figuratively speaking, maybe politically speaking. That remains to be seen. But it's it's not going to break his heart. But I appreciate the fact that he did apologize. What should be correct is the glaring admission of Native Americans from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, right? You might say that Native Americans are about as important to rock and roll as Black people, right? There's this whole notion that Black people invented all forms of popular culture, including rock and roll. And I'm not saying that they didn't popularize and extend it and deepen it, drawing from their own indigenous traditions combined with Western instruments developed by Adolphe Sax, for example, who created a whole family of saxophones and the piano, right, or piano, if you will, right. So I don't think any one group has a exclusive claim to any of this. And in a recent cast, I made the grandiose claim that hip hop and rap is not a Black art; it's a Japanese art, because 99% of the equipment that's responsible for rap and hip hop, either its production or its consumption, including the ghetto blaster, the boom box, is due to the engineering excellence and the affordability of Japanese music electronics. Think about that. Okay. Remember, Jimi Hendrix, as good as he was, made his bones on a 6-string electric guitar designed by Freddie Tavares, who, by the way, was Hawaiian Filipino, and Leo Fender. He didn't make it on the kora, right, the West African string instrument. And by the way, speaking of Native Americans, Jimi Hendrix was half Indian, I think, 50%, a very high percentage. Cherokee, I believe that's according to him. I don't know what the PC term for Cherokee is today, but and his mother definitely has those Indian Native American roots there, and he wrote about it as well. Little Wing, great song. Anyway, I don't want to. I think I'll have to do a whole talk or two on Jimi Hendrix himself. So there's some similarities between the career of Jann Wenner. He would be like an older brother to me, generationally. He's the cool brother who you look up to him, and he always had these cute girlfriends, and he was able to drive, and you were like walking on the street or driving your bicycle, delivering your newspapers. Then he goes off to college, he'd come back, and he'd have all the really interesting books that his professors assigned him in the English class, and he had all the records. So that was him. I was the older brother in my family, but at a far remove, geographically, but not spiritually. Jann Wenner served that function for me, and I still feel a very strong closeness or bond to him, even though I've never met him. And I don't think he's ever said anything nasty or mean spirited. He might have hurt some feelings, but artists tend to be a little bit sensitive. But I don't think he went out of his way to hurt anybody. In fact, if you want to take the time in reading his past journalism, which I have, I mean, I grew up with it. I was reading every issue page by page, including all the ads. I was so steeped in it, or the numerous books he's written. It's obvious that the guy is not a sexist or racist. All right. And you noticed the pile-on was not really severe. No one has their heart in these types of little lynching exercises going on. Maybe that's ending by now. Maybe all the black and the brown and a few. There's a couple of yellows who are coming up who kind of worry me. A couple of brown people, South Asian. They're kind of worrying me. Right? They're taking place of the Latinos or Latinx and the angry black people. So far as DEI is concerned, and I'm going to call them out as I see them, right? And I've talked about a couple of them in this show as well. Remember, my most recent book is called Servitors of Empire, and I call out Asian Americans in specific about their occupying this middleman role, or this middling position between capitalists, the ownership, right? The people who live on Nob Hill in San Francisco, who were the parents of the children that Jann Wenner went to school with, right? Out in Marin there, or down in Rolling Hills Estates, or Palos Verdes Estates, Rolling Hills, which, by the way, in the lower lands there, that used to be a Japanese ghetto. There used to be a whole fishing community around that bay, South Bay area, and all the rich white folk lived up on the hill. Right, but he went to school up there. I went to public school. I'm not complaining anyway. I'm just saying that we lived in different worlds, and I lived in the world of segregation. You dig? I grew up in the tail end part of segregation. It wasn't just in the deep South. It was in the South, all right, but Southern California. And so I just want to clarify that, because sometimes people look at me and they wonder what kind of privilege I was able to parlay into such a successful career as a YouTuber with 12,300 subscribers. Man, and all I ever wanted to be is as big as Joe Rogan, but without the steroids. You can make it happen. Subscribe to me now if you haven't already, and put a like and spread this all over the place. Right? I will be the new Joe Rogan. I won't even have to hurt myself in mixed martial arts. Right? I went through the wars already. It was called academia. Anyway, that's my advertisement for my channel today. Let's see. Okay. Different. Some random comments here. Electrified Spanish guitar. Yes. That's what ES stands for, Les, an ES 335 or the ES 350. I have a 350. Never had a ES 335, ES electric Spanish. So we had a lot of fun, me and Howard Wilson. He's been on the show 2 or 3 times, this Professor Hamamoto channel. And we got to give credit to Mr. Meese. I forgot his first name, Mr. Meese. He held his journalism class in the Quonset hut. Okay, those of you who might not know it, the baby boom was such that the schools were filled to capacity, and there's just so much building that had to take place that some classes were put in, at least temporarily, into Quonset huts, which were used during World War II as temporary housing for GIs. So we had classes like that. That's probably another difference between his journalist class and my journalist class, but it doesn't matter. We were both aspiring writers. We have that fever, that hunger, that energy, that anger, the need to outrage and to shock and to awe, right? And I was drawing energy from Rolling Stone, I'm sure. But even at that early juncture, ladies and gentlemen, I should say, I could see that there was a seed of commercial exploitation already developing. And I did do a piece. Howard Wilson published it in the op-ed section. It was called "The Aquarian Deception," something to that effect, right? How the age of Aquarius had been brought upon us, and the hippie counterculture revolution was already becoming part of some sort of cash nexus. And that supposedly was antithetical to the whole idea of a counterculture. So it was happening even by that early time. And I was one of the early commentators, observers of that, even as a punky little kid who probably didn't even have a driver's license yet, right? Just very briefly, just to establish my journalistic bona fides, I was going through the mail that we received at the editorial office at the Savannah. I forgot the name of the paper. I think it was the Rebel or something like that. There was a Southern Confederate motif in our school, even though we didn't have an H behind Savannah. Maybe it's the KKK connection. I don't know, but we were the Savannah Rebels. And we received the journalism department received our class received a invitation. I don't know how I got a hold of it, to attend the very first press conference of Elton John. Yes, the Elton John. And it was held in Universal City, which was very new at the time. I think I had my driver's license by that time I was like 16 years old. So I went with my friend down to LA. We drove over there and saw Elton John, got a free album of his very first album, and I wrote a review of it. And it was kind of like a gonzo journalist. I talked about not just the album itself, but the adventure of going to LA and seeing this guy who we didn't even know yet. We heard him on the radio. We're starting to hear on the radio. "Your Song" was the first one I remember, written by Bernie Taupin, of course. And I became a fan. And the second one, the album was good as well. And my second indirect encounter with Rolling Stone was when I went to college. I graduated early from Savannah High School, and I went immediately into Cal State Long Beach. They accepted you in mid-year, so I went in there and took a number of. I majored in political science, but I took most of my courses in English and comparative literature because I couldn't really shake the whole writing literary aspiration part. The lawyer part of me, the pre-law person, it never did ever click in, and I'm thankful for that. So one of the courses I took was in popular culture. And I said, wow, you can teach a course in that? We're talking about now 72, right? 72, 73, maybe as late as 74. I forgot the name of the professor, but he taught this course here. And he happened to mention this journal at Bowling Green State University. It was called the Journal of Popular Culture. And I said, my gosh, you can study this? Because this was my life. This is all I wanted to write about. At that age, I wanted to write about Motown, right? I wanted to write about popular music and popular culture and films, of course, movies, television, which I did go on to do. So I'll finish up this story because it does have a happy ending. So on that basis, I sent away for back issues of a sister journal called the Journal of Popular Music and Society that was edited by a prominent sociologist. He's Canadian by nationality, R. Serge Denisov, or he was known as Ron Denisov. And he edited that, and I got like a 3 back issue of it. It was like a running series on the history of Rolling Stone, of all things. Some graduates had probably had assembled an early days account of Rolling Stone. And I have that somewhere. I'll have to go through my archives and pull that out. And so I brought those journals to class one day in English class, and my professor was so astounded that some undergraduate would follow up on one of his lectures and would take the initiative to send away and purchase these journals so I can study it. And what I was doing, of course, is seeing what I could do to perhaps further my education in this area. And I did. I applied for a graduate degree, master's degree in popular culture at Bowling Green State University at the time, and I was accepted. And so I was there from late 75 through 76, and I went on to after that, a doctoral program at UC Irvine. But that was an important turning point for me, the program at Bowling Green, Ohio, by the way, Bowling Green State University, Ohio, not Kentucky. I think it's still around, but it's probably dedicated to lesbianic studies and Negro outrage, Negroes with guns. That's a book title, by the way. Don't call me a racist. And you name it, red stockings, whatever. Anything politically correct, which is now going out. You guys are going to have to find a new hobby horse to jump onto because DEI and all that stuff's going out. Students aren't buying it. Parents aren't paying for it. The economy's not going to sustain it. We have bigger fish to fry than your hurt feelings. All right, so go find something better too. There's tons of material, exciting topics, themes, subjects that can be tackled. So thank you, Jann Wenner. I'm sorry, I keep trying to Germanize his name. Jann Wenner for helping lay the groundwork for what later became my profession. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about what happened to Jann Wenner, and I think he should be reinstated. All right, don't make a big deal about it. You don't even have to call another press conference. Just say Jann Wenner, based on the decades of service he has done to enhance interracial, interethnic, and intergender and sexual minority versus majority, because he's gay now. He used to be heterosexual. I don't know what his identity is, but you can put the gender politics in there because of all his contributions area that that he has proven that he is not guilty as charged, or he's not even charged. I mean, he's just being accused. He's being smeared, and it's unfair, right? And if I was in his position, I'm not. I'm not even sure if I would have apologized. I would have said, "Gee, you know, go take a diving, what?" And because he's made his country, he doesn't really have to answer to anybody, and he can be proud of his achievement. And I admire and respect his professional contribution to American arts and letters and arts and science. Has he won a Medal of Freedom yet? If he hasn't, what's the holdup here, right? Was this a setup so that he wouldn't get the medal? Did he insult somebody in some article that he published in Rolling Stone? He'll never get to wear the medal. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't care about the medal, but his career should not be taken down for just probably some sort of just lapse in diplomacy. You know what? He's an editor. He's a writer. These are not new articles. These are articles that he wrote back in those days. He could have interviewed some more recent artists, perhaps, and included in this anthology. He didn't do it for whatever reason. That's his decision. Anyway, I don't want to belabor the point. Let's just see uh, Jann Wenner himself in his apology to the American public. I accept his apology. I hope everybody else does. And it's my fondest desire that the Museum of Rock and Roll or the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, whatever it's called. I'm tired of these award shows anyway. The Golden Globalist, as one of my friends call it, the Academy Awards. It's all a bunch of shuck anyway. Anyway, let's take a look at Jann Wenner.
Magazine co-founder Jann Wenner explains why he only included white men in his new book, The Masters, a collection of interviews with rock legends like Mick Jagger, John Lennon, and Bono.
Insofar as the women, I mean, there were just none of them were as articulate enough on this intellectual level.
Oh, stop it. You're telling me Joni Mitchell is not articulate enough?
It's not that they're not creative geniuses. It's not that they're inarticulate, although go have a deep conversation with Grace Slick or Janice. Please be my guest.
Those comments published Friday from an interview with New York Times Magazine, now criticized as sexist and racist. The foundation Wenner helped create, issuing a terse statement Saturday saying, Jann Wenner has been removed from the board of directors of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Foundation. Overnight, Wenner releasing an apology. In my interview with the New York Times, I made comments that diminished the contributions, genius, and impact of Black and women artists, and I apologize wholeheartedly for those remarks.
The rock and roll has been giving us the truth about America, and we have the responsibility of doing something about it and having our voice heard in deciding where this country is going, more than ever.
The Hall of Fame has faced past criticism for not embracing more diverse artists.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, please, 2020, induct more women. Thank you so much.
But some critics have applauded recent changes, and the newest class of inductees include Kate Bush, Sheryl Crow, and Missy Elliott.
Maybe I should have gone and found one Black and one woman artist to include here. I wish, in retrospect, I could have interviewed Marvin Gaye. Maybe have been the guy.
During the recorded interview, Wenner noted that he didn't include.
All right, that's enough of that. You got to see Jann Wenner in action and the whole tempest in the teapot that was brewing over his indelicate remarks. I'm sure these artists could care. They're artists, they're performers, they have thick skins. They're used to being pelted with beer bottles and such. So all these self-righteous media twerps who are making a big deal out of it, they can go home and cry in their little in their beer. Okay, so let's move on. I mentioned Ben Fong Torres, right? I was always mystified about. She's got a Chinese name, Fong, and then it's a hyphen Torres, and so I said, well, is he like Filipino Chinese? You know, which there are a lot of that ethnicity. But then I read his book because I do my homework and I'm always reading books on popular music. This goes back years. I read his autobiography called Rice Room, and it talks about his early years in Oakland, or as they say, Oakland, Chinatown. He still has a little bit of Cantonese accent in his speech patterns, which I think is cool, right? But both his parents were immigrants from southern China, Guangdong, a certain region within that, and they went into a quote unquote Chinese profession, which was restaurant work. And he did a lot of his thinking and writing and listening to radio at the restaurant in the rice room where they stored all the rice. And his mother worked as a seamstress during the day and raised, I believe, 5 children. He was one of them. He had and still does have has a beautiful sonorous radio voice, and he indeed has a very long career as a disc jockey or an announcer, voiceover artist as well. But he was, as I alluded to earlier, one of the early reviewers, multi-purpose writers for Jann Wenner. He hired him, right? This is before affirmative action, right? Because he was earnest and sincere and passionate. And that's what's going to take these whiners to the top if they drop the act of victimage and pursue their passion and their obsession and just dropped all the garbage that their professors are teaching them, who themselves probably got over on the whole DEI stuff. There was a recent story about the woman responsible for DEI over at Harvard University, Claudine Gay, who was the president and accused of plagiarism. She's out. By the way, don't get down on me for, supposedly making fun of the Black vernacular speech, but that's what I grew up with, because I told you I grew up in segregation in the Black community. All right. But anyway, her officer who was in charge of DEI, she's being accused of plagiarism as well. Diversity, equity, and inclusion at Harvard. All right. And guess what? She is also of the African-American persuasion. Oh my gosh. There's a lot of brilliant African-American intellectuals out there. Why did you have to go with the bottom feeders? Right? Is it because you thought you could control them? Right? Why don't you hire Professor John McWhorter, right, over at Columbia? Why don't you hire Professor Glenn Laurie over at Brown University? They're excellent scholars and public intellectuals. And excellent thinkers. I mean, there's many more than that. By the way, I'm just mentioning people who are probably better known to the public, just to get away over this idea that there's not a very large pool of people that we can extract this talent from. So let's take a look at Ben Fong Torres. He's the Chinaman that got over. That always fascinates me, Let's take a look.
Ben Fong Torres with you or without you on KSAN the Jive 95.
This guy, he's got some history, Ben Fong Torres. Well, I used to read him in Rolling Stone.
Ben Fong Torres, immortalized in Almost Famous.
This is Ben Fong Torres. I'm the music editor at Rolling Stone magazine.
Before the internet, before blogging, before tweeting.
Hello, Rolling Stone.
There was the Rolling Stone. There were superstars who worked there. One of the biggest was Ben Fong Torres.
Ben Fong Torres polishes his piece on Jefferson's Starship.
Everybody read Rolling Stone magazine. Mick Jagger read Rolling Stone magazine. John Lennon read Rolling Stone magazine. And so everybody knew Ben Fong Torres.
Hi, Steve. How you doing, Ben Fong Torres?
Oh, Al Green.
See you tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Ben Fong Torres.
Thank you, Paul.
I was 23 years old when I started writing for Rolling Stone.
There was nobody who was Chinese American or Asian American doing anything in printed media. And yet I wanted to be out there.
Are you going to quote me?
Everything you said so far. So what makes you laugh?
Arguments. Whenever I hear an argument, I laugh.
I kind of gravitated to people who were in some ways marginalized. Having come from my background helped to direct subjects and the way stories were done.
It was like something that made me feel like because I was black, I could never be or I would never be. Maybe I'm a Taurus or whatever, it just made me fight.
Ben was writing something, I was inclined to go with it because he was coming from where we were coming from.
He had a lightness and gravitas at the same time, which I've not succeeded in replicating.
Here we have a picture of Ben.
He's one of the great writers ever. There's some good ones, but not as good as this guy.
You do a wonderful Bob Dylan.
Now, that was a Dick Clark production called Your...
Okay. Sorry for the video freezing up. I think I'm running out of memory here. I should address, and I thought of this as I was listening to Jann Wenner. There's a comment by the polypharmist that Grace Slick is really bright and seems articulate. Indeed, she is and was. Not only was she the most beautiful woman artist that we've seen and singer, performer, but she was extremely bright. She went to a private elite women's college in New York. I can't remember, upstate, or I don't know if it was in Manhattan or whatever else. It was sort of the type of school that, William Barr, Bill Barr or Jeffrey Epstein would be associated with that. And she comes from one of these private school networks. And indeed, her family were, I think, Bay Area, maybe not Bay Area, but more specifically San Francisco. I think they were gentry. I think they were even higher up on the social scale than the Wenners. Right, because I saw an interview with her mother and daughter in Life magazine, many years ago. And she's a brilliant lady. And that tells me I should try to find out if she's written an autobiography. I'm very interested in her career and her thoughts and this and that and the other. She's still with us, thank goodness. So that has been Fong Torres. He's still active, I believe. Although I think he's I don't know if he's doing any broadcasting now, but he's still very much involved. Now, I didn't even get into some of the anecdotes and I encourage you to pick up the book yourself to read it. And it would be really ridiculous for me to try to just go review the book, but I will state that I learned a lot of information that is not available in the general histories that has a wide relevance to the larger history. What comes to mind, for example, I read this and it was very eerie, that the day after the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy in Los Angeles, most of you know the situation at the Ambassador Hotel. He had just wrapped up the California state primary, and it looks like he was on his way to the U.S. presidency. And Sirhan Bishara Sirhan, a Palestinian American, supposedly was the lone gunman in killing RFK. And but the day after the assassination happened, Mick Jagger finished the final take for "Sympathy for the Devil," which was released in 1968. And Wenner was quite close to Mick Jagger. Jagger is one of his early subjects of a number of interviews. He also was very close to, I think, as close as you can get to as a journalist and a rock star. We didn't call them rock stars back then, but our heroes. He was also close to John Lennon. Right? Remember the lyric? Right. This is on Beggar's Banquet. I'm talking about this material here, which is not something I read about. I live this. I was sitting there watching television with my parents with continuous coverage on the aftermath of the Kennedy assassination. All the local and independent stations covered it. They all covered the same. There was nothing else to watch. Everything else was shoved to the side. That was the attention of the entire American public for the longest time. And Mick Jagger, in his young age, poetic sensibility. He's no ragamuffin. He's no apple scruff. He was studying at the LSE, London School of Economics. His father was I don't know if he was middle class, but he was a clerk. He was not a working class hero by any chance. So he was educated and read literature and was literate himself. So he says, "Yeah, Mick Jagger, I shouted out, 'Who killed the Kennedys?' When after all, it was you and me." Wow. That was the final take, right? The day after that. So this book is full of anecdotes like this. I encourage you to pick it up. All right. He's got some very good insights on Bob Dylan. You think you know everything you want about Bob Dylan? A lot of it has its origins in Jann Wenner's early reportage. Some of you may not know this, but I will remind you as I begin to close out here. But I don't know if the proper word would be discovered, but it was really in Rolling Stone that I found out about Hunter S. Thompson, otherwise known as Dr. Gonzo, who went on to have a huge career way beyond Rolling Stone. But he was a discovery of Jann Wenner, and he did all kinds of contortions in order to bring him on, to hold him, to motivate him, to do reportage. And that was one of the shining lights of the old Rolling Stone, the original Rolling Stone. And the illustrations, before I forget, were done by none other than Ralph Steadman. And if you're interested in looking at his work, there's all kinds of material online that you can take a look at. The movies of Fear and Loathing, as you know, was made. In fact, we'll see a little bit of it right now, a little trailer here about Dr. Gonzo. He's just one of many journalists that the great Jann Wenner brought to the fore and helped to create contemporary American arts and letters, right? And became really sort of the international face of the best of what American culture and society and politics had to represent back then. Today, now it's globalist, it's neoliberalist, it's Pentagon-driven, it's moving in an awful direction. I don't know to what degree Jann Wenner can be held personally responsible for it, but I still think he's young enough to start a new publication. And if he is, I want to write. If he does, I want to write for it. Okay, that's my job application, Mr. Wenner. Right? You gave a Chinaman Ben Fong Torres a gig. Give me a gig. This wasn't a tribute to you for that purpose. I think he was given a raw deal in being defamed as he was, and his contribution will endure, unlike the people who are whining and crying about their hurt feelings. So again, let's take a look at Hunter Thompson. I know he has a murky past that we've heard about over the recent years. That's to be determined where he went. He committed suicide, if you didn't know. Why he did, that remains to be seen. A lot of more journalism to be covered, a lot more history to be made, ladies and gentlemen. America's not over yet. American journalism is not over yet. They're going to try to kill it. They're draining it. They're exsanguinating it. But so long as there's life and breath in each and every one of us, it ain't going to happen. All right. So let's take a look at Hunter Thompson here.
Gonzo journalist.
He was a genius.
Larger-than-life character.
Hunter, to his dying day, wanted to be thought of as an outlaw.
One of the most famous writers in the world.
Hunter is one of the funniest American writers in all history.
Hunter S. Thompson was a man whose life was fueled by drugs, alcohol, and the desire to expose the truth about America.
He represents everything that's wrong in this country. Down the line.
He was worshipped by fans, loved by celebrities. But in the end, it wasn't enough. After bringing his closest family members to his home in Colorado,
he went as long as he could.
He wrote the final chapter to his amazing life.
Well, that was a trailer for one of the many pieces on the mysterious death of one Hunter S. Thompson. Now, as I close out here, I should at least briefly touch upon the primal scene of a lot of us during this time. I was a preteen, 12, 13, I don't know, 11, 10, 11. Can't remember exactly, but I was, Jann Wenner was a number of years older, but we all experienced the Beatles. That really shaped our world from then on. And I thought his account of going to see A Hard Day's Night was incredibly good. I also, in preparing for this talk, came across an hour-long documentary on the making of A Hard Day's Night, which was produced by Walter Shenson, who he has interviewed extensively in the documentary. He's very bright, intelligent, perceptive, of a different generation, mind you. He knew what was coming down the pike here with the Beatles. It was a United Artists production as well. So let's take a look at the trailer for it, because in the book here, Like a Rolling Stone, the Jann Wenner book, he talks about the impact of going to see A Hard Day's Night in the movie. I had the similar revelation. I think my parents took us to the theater, dropped us off in front, and then they said, well, when it's over, call us, we'll pick you up. Just let the phone ring 3 times and then hang up, and then you'll get your dime back. So it'll be like a free call. It'll be like a signal. So here's the trailer. I'm gonna give you a little bit of music too. I don't want to get this copyright strike here, but here we go. It's been a hard day's night, and I've been working like a dog.
Are you ready? Then brace yourself. Here they are.
It's been a hard day's night, and I've been working like a dog. It's been a hard day's night. I should be sleeping like a log, but when I get home to you, I find the things that you do will make me feel alright. You know I work all day to get your money to buy a thing. You know you should be glad.
See you next week. Thank you very much. This has been a joy to be with you today. Thank you. Bye.